Welcome to TV Trash. We've lost way too many good people in 2014, and on that too long of a list would be Harold Ramis. Ramis was a brilliant writer and director of comedic movies, whose credits included the likes of Caddyshack, Meatballs, Animal House, and Groundhog Day. But he's probably most known for co-writing and starring in the 1984 supernatural comedy hit Ghostbusters, where Ramis, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, and Ernie Hudson looked to rid New York City from gluttonous slime monsters, giant marshmallow men, and other supernatural forces. So in honor of Mr. Ramis, and with Halloween having just taken place, we're going to take a look back now at the Ghostbusters TV series.
We're the Ghostbusters.
I'm Spencer. He's Tracy.
I'm Kong. We're the Ghostbusters. We're clever, courageous, and strong.
What? Yeah, if you weren't aware of this, it turns out the Ghostbusters movie was not the first entity to bear that title. Nearly a decade before Ramis and Dan Aykroyd's film hit theaters, we had The Ghostbusters, a live-action show produced by Filmation that aired on CBS in 1975. Now, the unfortunate thing is I was only able to procure one episode of this series, even though it did get a video release. More on that later. But for now, let's take a look at what we've got from The Ghostbusters.
I've been telling you for years. You're past your prime, you old bat.
Remember who you are speaking to, my dear. The one and only Count Dracula!
Bela Lugosi is shaking his head in disgust. Heck, Leslie Nielsen is shaking his head.
Why didn't I marry Vladimir or Ladislav? They were great vampires.
But you must admit, I was a bad filmmaker.
There's gonna be a lot of that in this show, right? Note to self, forward this show to the horror guru for the lulz. We then move to the main characters of the show, a team of supernatural investigators named Kong and Spencer, played by Forrest Tucker and Larry Storch, formerly known as Sergeant O'Rourke and Corporal Agarn on F Troop.
I'm teaching Tracy here how to talk.
Oh. Well, I'm glad you're not teaching him how to think. I wouldn't want to see him set back that far.
Oh yes, and they were also assisted by their intelligent pet gorilla named Tracy. Because gorilla! Yeah, it was actually a guy in a gorilla suit, but the show actually credited the actor in the suit as the gorilla's trainer. And people thought Paul Fusco was nuts on how he treated his Alf puppet.
Who is the greatest baseball player of all time?
Wait, are you trying to make me believe that he's saying Babe Ruth?
You were supposed to say DiMaggio.
I don't know why I was trying to teach you to talk anyway. If you ended up talking the way you drive, nobody would be able to understand you. Are you trying to tell me you can drive this thing blindfolded?
I think I'd rather trust Vanderbilt to fire a cannon than have that ape as my driver. So, get this. They get their assignments from a convenience store on a tape recording that's built into a model plane.
Your next assignment involves the ghosts of Count and Countess Dracula. They have come back once again in their quest for a fountain of youth.
Oh, and the voice on the message is that of Filmation executive Lou Scheimer, because that's how cheap they were.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
Wow, you should have seen that thing. Took off like a rocket. Too bad you're wearing a blindfold. It was really something to see.
Now, look on the bright side. It'll only be another 8 years until Inspector Gadget learns how to do that gag right.
I must remember to get my radar fixed.
When you are a bat, you are supposed to use your super sensitive hearing to hear objects in your path.
Huh?
I wonder if Vladimir and Ladislav are still available.
Yeah, after this, anyone who tells me the Shredder from the 80s Turtles series was incompetent, I'm gonna tell them to frack off. By the way, this castle the vampires have taken nest in, apparently it was used in every single episode, with whatever monster they were fighting always moving into it. If it were only 15 years later, they'd have no problem getting the city to tear the place down to build a mini-mall.
Go fish. Spence, will you look at the filing cabinet and see what we got on vampires and bats?
Hey, what do you know about that? A baseball bat.
The fact that shows like this get on the air is why I try not to ridicule the puns of internet reviewers. So Kong discovers that the bite of a vampire turns one into a vampire, and the only way to reverse it is another bite. Yeah, I'm not questioning that. Every work of fiction comes up with their own version on how to cure such a thing, and it's still better than anything Stephanie Meyer thought up. And sure enough, Spencer gets bitten because you know Larry Storch's character is going to be the butt monkey. But when they go after Kong and Tracy, they are no match for the power of Tracy's... Well, gee, why didn't Buffy ever think of trying something like that?
A wooden stake!
That's not a wooden stake.
Splinter!
Wow, the Captain N version of Simon Belmont had more dignity as a vampire hunter. So they get Spencer to bite Mrs. Dracula, which turns him back to normal, just go with it. And then they finish the vampires off with their dematerializer, which makes them vanish with the power of bad purple strobe lighting.
Come in.
Permit me to introduce myself. I am the cow. Now, what's with them? I just wanted to show them the neat teeth I'd found in a box of popcorn.
I can make a snarky comment to end this episode, but I can think of someone who does a better job at it.
Well, darling, they just don't make them like that anymore, do they? Thank God.
I know I'm taking a risk by judging this series by just one episode, but if this is any indication, it shows why this series has been forgotten. It panders to kids as badly as anything that's come out in recent years, and tries way too hard to be a satire of horror. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I prefer comedy over horror, and it is impossible to make a parody of horror and monster stories, but the incredibly slow pacing and way over-the-top slapstick just rob any chance of really making it funny. It's really sad because Tucker and Storch were hilarious on F Troop, but they just didn't have enough to work with here for any chance of this show to be memorable. But, much like the supernatural beings these Ghostbusters fought, this turned out to be an entity that simply would not die. We'll tell you about that after this. Are you tired of phony news stories showing up on your Facebook page, causing you to go into a panic-induced rage or a rage-induced panic, only to find out later what a moron you were for falling for such an obvious ruse? The latest Rowdy C show is the dose of catharsis you need. Join me for News Crap, where we'll look at the worst phony stories that get shared over social media and tear them apart like they should be. Coming soon to rowdyc.com.
Quest Seekers The Wormstone, putting a new spin on the fantasy adventure genre, now available at Amazon.com.
So here's what happened as best as I can figure out. The Ghostbusters received such a lukewarm reception while airing and faded into such obscurity in the following years that when Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd put together their little movie idea, Filmation and the show's producers were more than willing to sell off the rights to the name for the film. Then the film became a hit, and naturally Columbia Pictures wanted to spin it off into a franchise that included an animated series. Now, supposedly, Filmation planned to work with Columbia to produce that series, but talks broke down, and then Filmation decided to go ahead and piggyback the success of the movie that had no relation, and they took advantage of the loophole that they had not sold off the titles rights for any other TV shows, and created their own animated series in 1986, adapted from the original live-action TV show. Now, we've talked before about live-action shows like Happy Days and Gilligan's Island getting animated adaptations that made no sense, so by comparison, an animated adaptation of a show that was already based in goofy supernatural fighting comedy couldn't get that much more ludicrous, right? Boy, you ain't seen nothing yet. Let's get into Filmation's Ghostbusters animated series. We open the first episode with the Phantom of the Opera mixed with the T-1000.
Still the wrong tune. Wrong again! How many more centuries will it take to find the right notes? A world of mortals! I did it! Now I shall bring together all ghosts and creatures of the night. Under my rule, we shall easily conquer the earth! No one would be foolish enough to try to stop ghosts!
Well, I know 4 individuals, but they're legally barred from appearing, so we get these guys. Yeah, we now cut to who I believe are Spencer and Kong training their sons to take over their business.
You've got to learn not to be afraid of ghosts.
Afraid? Who's afraid? I'm scarified!
That's strange. My nose is twitching.
It's a robot ghost!
Robot Ghost! I think we have found something more ludicrous than Laserbat!
leader of ghosts and evil spirits.
So their plan to stop Prime Evil is to seal him into some tunnel, because apparently robot ghosts are incapable of that whole non-corporeal walk-through walls thing.
Where'd that primeval creep come from, Pop?
I don't know, but he's one ghost you won't have to worry about. We'll seal this area off. It'll probably be 100 years before anyone even sets foot back here.
Sure enough, 100 years later, Prime Evil is able to break free, and I guess decides to set up shop in the future, or the fifth dimension, as I think it's officially called. Back to the Ghostbusters, who have not only moved into that creepy mansion that the ghosts all haunted in the first series, they transplanted it into the middle of Manhattan.
Don't let the answer bone get it. Hello. You reached the Ghostbusters telephone answering machine, and you're in luck. The Ghostbusters aren't home.
This is the Skelevision.
There must be something on. Let's change the channel.
Yeah, change your own channel, bub. I'm resting my transistors.
Yeah!
I guess they hired the Addams family to do the renovations. Prime Evil, meanwhile, builds some sort of airship hideout thing and assembles a rogues gallery that includes...
No, Flagster, werewolf of the future.
Mysteria, darling, mistress of mists.
Long John Scarecrow, sailor of the seven galaxies.
Sir Trancelot, a bad night to one and all.
Oh, apparition, spirit sorceress supreme. Oh.
I say, I'm the Haunter, civilized hunter of haunted play.
Flowthart, musical maestro of fright. I'm scared stiff.
The Legion of Doom, these guys are not. At any rate, Evil's minions do take over the future and travel back to capture the original Ghostbusters, but fortunately the kids find the official Ghostbusters manual that was buried in one of their file cabinets. Yet you'd think that would be the first thing Spencer and Kong would give them.
Jumping jumper cables. Next time, call before you drop in.
So they get changed in this place that looks like what would happen if the Joker renovated the Batcave. The car is now a sentient, sarcastic being that's a cross between the Gadget-Mobile and Doc Brown's DeLorean. Of course, let me remind you all that this was made by a production company whose crown jewel of animation was about a cross between Conan the Barbarian and Prince Valiant fighting an evil skeleton wizard in flying cars. Yeah, if you worked for Filmation, you had access to the good drugs. This was actually the first part of what looks like a 2-hour movie that debuted the series, as the kids travel to the future and meet this future alien Ghostbuster named Futura before they go back in time to medieval England, ancient Egypt, and the Stone Age before they're taken by Prime Evil, only to find their fathers trapped in the same mine and thwart Prime Evil by sealing him in the exact same tunnel. Apparently, Prime Evil is a robot ghost built by the lowest bidder. By the next episode, Prime Evil is busted out of the mine somehow, and this show has become your typical 1980s action cartoon. Every episode pretty much centers around Prime and one or more members of his gallery coming up with some plan to take over Earth or destroy the Ghostbusters. Meanwhile, Spencer and Kong Jr. enlist the aid of either Futura and or Jessica Rae, who I will give credit for being the second hottest redhead reporter ever in a cartoon.
Oil, you mummified moron! Gasoline! Fuel! Without it, the Earth would be helpless! No cars, no trucks, no trains would move!
The show, if you haven't figured it out by now, is one giant cluster crap. It just mixes in everything, from ghosts and other supernatural beings, robots, time travel. This is the freaking Ultima One of cartoons.
You repulsive little rodent! You've sent the Ghostbusters into the past with Futura!
Get thee hence, evil spirit!
Evil spirit? Where?
Kong is the leader of this group and supposedly has the hots for Futura, while Spencer, like Dad, is the comic relief in that he's the scaredy cat and klutz of the group. By the way, this is supposedly the exact same Tracy from the original live series, meaning he must have been a kid in that show since gorillas live about half as long as humans. Oh, and he's also voiced by Lou Scheimer, so they didn't have to pay another actor. Sadly, Scheimer did not have a new future calling like Lorenzo Music. Like their dads, they ultimately used the dematerializer along with a bunch of other crazy gadgets to zap the ghosts to parts unknown, albeit only temporarily, before they returned to Prime. So what, did Deke see this and steal that concept to create Ganon's evil jar in the Legend of Zelda cartoon? Oh, and every episode ended a lot like the He-Man cartoon ended as well, with the Skull-O-Vision having to tell some lesson to appease the parent groups.
When you have a problem to solve, try not to give up on it because maybe with a little more work, you'll be able to solve it.
The series actually managed to get a full syndicated season of 65 episodes, but it can't really be that surprising that it didn't get another one. Mainly because Columbia still went on with its direct adaptation of the movie called The Real Ghostbusters to add insult to injury. The reruns were picked up by the Family Channel in 1989 and lasted there for 5 years. Man, how did that get past Pat Robertson's pompous, sanctimonious ass? Believe it or not, it keeps getting picked up by networks to this day, from Cubo to Retro TV. In other words, any new network desperate to fill a time slot because this show is freaking nuts! To be honest, it might not be completely a so bad you can't watch it nuts. It's basically He-Man involving the undead in a modern day society, using as many cartoonish aspects as they can throw in, which I'm guessing the producers would have used for the live action series if they had the capabilities back then. Still, the real thing holding it back is the fact that it lives in the shadow of the other Ghostbusters franchise that everyone knows better, which is still possibly their fault since this thing was created to piggyback on the movie's success. I will give the show credit for just going all out in its ludicrousness, but it just throws so much at you that it's hard for anything to make any real sense. Both the live-action and animated series were released to DVD in 2007, but they're both out of print now since the distribution company went under. I wonder why. Meanwhile, it looks like the new Ghostbusters film is still going to attempt to be made without Harold Ramis or original director Ivan Reitman, and it supposedly may be a reboot with an all-female cast. It's not like rebooting 80s franchises are a trend or anything.
I'm Rainbow Bright.
What is this place?
Rainbow Land! Isn't it rad?